Oh, there he is.
I just informed them you wouldn't be here today. Well, come sit at the table, sir.
Wheel yourself over. Gonna put this
You just sat down, right?
Rich Kessenberg,
Here?
Sean Kimball. Here. Sarah Stevens Marlin,
Here.
Jeff Solon.
Here.
Greg Rosenblatt.
Here.
Chris Staddy. Here. Megan Rockwell.
Here.
Dennis Ryu. Here. Chuck Neff. Thank you.
Oh, I was gonna say, you should sit down.
Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public comments, correspondence. Sarah, you have some
Yes,
correspondence?
yes, so, we did receive, a message to, Rich on August 29th, so a while ago. From, David Gavin, who's a member of the Cheshire Energy Committee. He is asking us to support further consideration of the geothermal energy option for the Norton design, and moving towards net zero energy consumption with the addition of solar, either by subsidized future investment or via a PPA, which I believe is a loan. The town has these in place at the former Cheshire landfill. They would also like to have some data on the life cycle cost for the options being considered, noting that it's important for citizens of Cheshire to understand the future costs for operating these systems, not just the cost for installation. And it sounds like as well, Richard Ogorick, the chairman of the Cheshire Energy Commission, offered to invite Rich or any members of the committee to the next Energy Commission meeting. The Energy Commission has a wealth of experience and is eager to share it with the committee to help during the process.
And I did respond
Yes.
to that email, filling them in where we are at this point in the process, and saying that
So,
we had,
in general, yes, with these so specific.
what is that?
Extra
Uh,
folks weighing in.
And, letting him know that we had all intention of talking to the Energy Commission. And I had talked to Justin and Jeff about this earlier, and just saying, let's first figure out where we think we're going and what we can afford to do before we go there. We will set up a time where we can speak to members.
And I will make a PDF. This correspondence, I'll send everybody a link so that you can reference. And we also received this public comment, just right now,
Yeah, that was handed to us.
Yeah.
And
which I haven't had a chance to look through yet, but I can scan it and share it with everyone so that you can all read it as well.
okay. Any other correspondence? That's it.
That's it.
Anything from the citizenry?
All set, thank you.
Okay. All right, approval of minutes, August 24th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second?
Second.
Second? Came from somewhere?
Sean.
Oh,
Yeah.
John over there. All right, any discussion?
I have two questions that, it's a typo. On page 2, the roofing materials, the one that was recommended, one paragraph says BE1C, the next line says BE1-4. But it's the same or a typo or it's two different materials.
I don't know. You shared to me.
I didn't write down those numbers.
Do we believe it's BE1C? Yes.
BE1C should be
BE1C is what it should say?
in the 2 times.
Okay,
Okay.
got that right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Anything else?
I have one more point on this. On the next page, 3, the 5th paragraph, we're talking about the overage. It says both totals are within the agreed 5%. I don't know if it's like agreed that we agreed or we say targeted. The agreed sounds like it was voted on and we said, yeah, 5%.
Do you want to change the word agreed to target?
Targeted, something I prefer.
Is that all right with everyone? Okay. Anything else? All right, then with your approval, we will vote to approve as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Action on submitted invoices. We have 2 invoices I sent you today. You want to go over those, Rich?
Yep, that's correct. There are only 2 invoices, one per project, and they're both for O&G for the same amount. So the first one is for the new Norton Elementary School, O&G Industries, in the amount of $10,324.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Ready?
to approve.
Motion to approve, seconded by Dennis. Any discussion? If not, then all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. And the second one?
Second invoice is also to O&G Industries. This is for the North End Elementary School, and it is in the same amount, $10,324 for pre-construction services.
All right, do we have a motion? Dennis? And a second?
I'll second.
Greg? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No. All right. Chairman's report. Couple of things. The first one I put on here is the Google Drive. I'm interested in possibly having somebody from our group be in charge of organizing and populating the Google Drive. As we'll recall, when we first started the process, Jeff and I think Vince put together a couple of Google Drives. One of them is for public consumption. The other was a working folder for us. When the working group began, there was a third one created. And then as you'll recall, recently, I went into the first working folder, kind of put things into folders, straightened it up, added some material in, sent an email out. Jeff said, whoops, we've got another working folder that we're also doing that with. So, you know, we need to have someone making sure that they're populating on a regular basis, that things are put into folders, that it's organized so that we can find things. I know that, you know, there have been some earlier concerns expressed. I recall from Chuck in particular that some of the material that we were looking for wasn't in there. So I was wondering if we had somebody who was willing to step up and be in charge of the working folders and possibly even consolidating them into a single working folder that has all the information that our committee and the working group need.
I would just say, like, right now, that should be the case. If there's difficulty with navigating it, we could work on that. But right now, everything that we do should be in here. There's a separate working group that is the school's staff representatives that does their own thing. That's not in here, nor do I think it necessarily should be. If we think it should be, then we could move that stuff in here, but.
But I thought that was the
everything
new one that you sent out.
should. This
That's the-
has everything in it.
But isn't that the same folder that the staff is using?
The one that, there's one folder that's on,
There's 2 folders now that have working folder names. I renamed our original one, working folder original. And then there's another working folder. So I mean, in my mind, there's some confusion there.
yeah, evidently. There's a folder that's SBC, reference documents. It's got everything in it. There was another one that I titled Working Group that was not and it's limited share because it's not public. Things like the votes on who voted, this was before the votes became public. Some of the bid stuff that's proprietary does not go into this folder, but that's in the other folder.
So the
There
SBC
shouldn't be
reference folder,
anything-
that's the public folder, right?
And there shouldn't be anything in it that is, it shouldn't be missing anything.
And that
If
one
it's
right
hard
now,
to navigate, if there's a question or concern about that,
I don't think it's navigation. I think it's a
happy to go
matter
through.
of, populating it.
yeah, all the information is in there.
And that one right now, only you have rights to that, or maybe you and Vince.
As editor, I think you do too, but, yeah, me, Arnett, Noel, Sean, Vin have editorial rights, but everybody else can see it. Anybody who accesses the site, the website.
Well, let me ask the committee. I mean, maybe it's only me that's been somewhat confused.
Well, there was definitely confusion because I didn't realize that
It was,
The
it
stuff
was
that-
different. It's
yeah,
better now.
the stuff that Tecton was dumping into the working group folder under the belief that it was, in the committee stuff, I've addressed that stuff. That's where the confusion was, that I didn't even realize until Chuck pointed it out at the last meeting, and I subsequently updated it.
So is this a task that you want to continue to keep?
Yeah,
Okay. I mean,
which
is fine with me. I mean, I thought,
No, I'm happy to do it. That's where the misunderstanding came in, and it wasn't necessarily anybody's fault per se. It was just a misunderstanding that has since been rectified. I believe. I mean, unless anybody has.
I would say the confusion
Sure.
that's still there is that there's a top folder called School Building Committee. There's two folders in it. One's called SBC Reference Documents. One's called Working Documents Original.
Yeah, the working.
Documents Original sounds like should just go away. because
It probably
everything's in
should. It should be buried
SBIC
someplace else
reference
because
document.
that's stuff that's like the proposals and things like that are not public documents.
Yeah, so the
I can definitely
SBC
take
reference
that out.
documents is public, and he's saying that there's one that their working group uses that we still have access to as viewers. So
and
we
that
still
has
have
everything
ownership.
else.
That has everything else that isn't public. So it's okay the way it's not. It just was.
All right,
checked
so
out
can
before.
we ask you, Jeff, just to
Yep.
take a look at those three folders, make sure that we get any duplication and that it's clearly delineated what's in
Yep.
where and that sort of thing.
You can-
Absolutely.
You can delete that one.
Okay.
because you're-
Great, thank you very much. Continuing the chairman's report, there was a Board of Ed presentation done the other day. I thought the staff did a wonderful job. Justin and Jeff presented where we are right now with an overview. Laura was there, Rich was there. I did a very quick intro. A lot of discussion about the energy systems. Few other comments and questions, but overall, we heard a lot of very nice, positive comments. I don't know if any of you have anything else you want to say on that? No? Okay. Fall Festival also, Tecton had, must have been 5 or 6 people. And Laura was there, Rich was there, Jeff, a bunch of us. It was a hot, sweaty day, but we had tons of people came around looking at the plans. Very, very nice, positive comments. Some people who lived in the neighborhood looking to find out, where the driveway going to be, where's the light pole going to be, where, that sort of conversation, which was great. Some town council members came by with some opinions. Opinions that I heard were several town council members, I think, having put a lot of money recently into window replacements in town, commented that, please don't have too many windows in the building. And I had one town council member who, once again had commented on the look of the north end building with the brick and that sort of thing. So that's, but overall, a lot of really nice positive comments, a lot of energy. It was a good day. So thank you all. Couple other meetings which I didn't have on the agenda here. There was a working group this just a couple of days ago, 2-hour meeting, very, very productive. Went through now room by room by room, looking at the layout, the lockers, where the furniture might go, where the blackboards might go, that sort of thing. Very detailed, staff very involved in that process. You can tell, this is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to, how their classroom might be set up and organized. So, and I know they didn't even get through the whole agenda because there was so much conversation and input. And then the last meeting that I was in was with the state, going over the North End schematic drawings with Barbara Fabiano from the state, OSCGR. And that also was a very positive meeting. Jeff coordinated and ran that meeting, and the state seemed to be very pleased with where we're at right now, and went through the specific checklist and essentially have approved us to move on. So anything on any of those meetings? Okay. The last thing that I wanted to note, and I don't want to belabor this, but I think we're heading into a new phase, and I wanted to talk just a little bit about that. Now that the schematics are just about finished, hopefully will be approved today, and we're out now doing presentations to the Board of Ed, the Town Council. We've got multiple community meetings. We're going to start getting a lot of input. And up to this point, I think, we've been very open to hearing input and trying to accommodate that. And I know the architects have pretty regularly heard from a person or a few people and said, let's see what we can do. More and more, I think we're going to have to make sure that we're bringing things back to the group. Otherwise, I think the architects in particular are going to get hammered with conflicting comments. 20 people will walk up and say, I want a huge cupola on the top of the north building, and why didn't you follow through with my suggestion? And I think those kinds of things are going to need to be brought back here. Here's what a cupola would look like, and here's how much it would cost. Committee, what do you want to do? So as much as we can, use us as the decision maker and those kinds of things. And when you get caught in those cross currents, make a note of it, bring it back to us, and ask for decision by the committee rather than feeling that you're getting buffeted by various groups. To a lesser extent, I think that's true with our own committee. As we've put things up, and we look at parts of the building, we've often very informally looked, and people have thrown out comments, reaction, whatever. We have to keep in mind that as a committee, we make decisions, and that means majority of the committee approves those decisions. So if you see something and you feel strongly about it, you make a motion. I really want a cupola on the top of that building. I don't care if it costs $500,000. I want that, and put it out here as a motion. And for those people on TV, we're not really doing that. But whatever this committee votes to do, that's what our staff will follow through with. Okay. Any reaction or comment there? Okay. And I will remind us as we go along. Rich, owner's rep and CM at risk, monthly schedule review.
So Laurel's got the updated schedule that I think is in the package.
I didn't hand it out yet.
Oh, you didn't have it there? Okay.
Did you have something you were gonna go over first, or?
No, what I wanted to say is that Laurel has updated the schedule, and I know that we have talked about the where we are with the schematic design, and that we were planning on having all of the approvals by the beginning of the month. And we are now in September, and we're going to be talking about Norton tonight. We've looked at the schedule, The end dates on the DD and then the start of construction have not changed. So while the schematic design process has taken a little longer than we anticipated, overall, we are still anticipating going out to bid in October of next year and getting started in construction by early, December of
Hopefully
'24 and then into '25.
Good.
So overall, yes, there are some changes in the schedule as far as the duration of schematic designs, but the overall schedule has not changed at all.
I can send it to you. Yeah.
If you want to make sure they can send a Google
Yeah, okay.
All right, so this is 7 pages. It's a big schedule, and so what I did was I put in red boxes, the things that should focus on, because those are upcoming or things that are happening, because there's a lot of detail on here. Again, the sole purpose of this is to try to get us to start construction on the time frame that we're after. So the first page is just milestones, they're just being fed in from below. So I'm gonna go right down to commissioning agents. So you have a commissioning agent. We had a meeting, and one of the activities that they're gonna be doing is developing the owner's project requirements. So that's a document where they will talk to facilities managers, and I know they were gonna go through Tecton, because Tecton had already done a lot of this legwork, but it's really just getting a feel for what systems are in, what systems should be out. So that's something that is something that the commissioning agent does. And then, once the owner project requirements are thoroughly vetted, the commissioning agent will then be checking the design to make sure that the design is meeting these requirements. And then eventually, once construction starts, they'll be ensuring that with the functional checklists and whatnot, that the equipment is working the way it was designed. So first thing is to make sure that they've got the owner's project requirements developed. That becomes the basis of design to the engineer, and then they ensure that it's actually constructed correctly. So that's a document that they're gonna be working on. On the next page, flipping it over, I just put a big box around all these. This is basically what's been going on, is all these presentations of the schematic design. Board of Ed, Town Council, you'll see I split them between North End and Norton. We're pretty good with getting through North End. For Norton, though, we're hoping to get the acceptance tonight. And then we are gonna be getting ready to go up, same review process that we just did with Barbara for North End, we'll be doing it for Norton. We do have a SDR meeting scheduled for September 27th. The building committee did approve the additional borings at the last building committee meeting, I believe it was, right? So they're getting that scheduled, and I think they're gonna try to hit October 9th, which is a holiday, especially at Norton, since it is an occupied school. The additional borings are kind of close to the existing school, so to have the rig out there, they want to do that when school was not in session. So that's some upcoming activities. And then eventually the geotech engineer will come up with their final reports that will then get rolled into our next round of estimates. Flipping it over, so we are now in DD. Architect is in full swing with design development for North End. And the idea is to get started with Norton, and that's what Rich was alluding to. You'll see that in your last schedule, we were showing towards the end of December for both schools to be done with design development, but we are giving until just after the holidays, January 5th, and then about a week and a half later would be Norton. So 2 schools are still somewhat together, just a little bit slight, it's a little bit slight delivery dates. But what I did is I took the duration out of the construction document. So that July 25th, I don't have that highlighted, but that date did not change, so.
And that
Tecton
will
will
go
be
through the
making
same
up.
process that we just went through. I see we're gonna do finish design development and send it out to the estimators.
Correct,
And
same.
then-
Now, the construction documents, a lot more happens. Not only do we do the estimate, but this is triggering all sorts of reviews. So this is the set that gets reviewed, and then we end up going to the state with. So there's a lot more happening after the construction documents.
Can I assume that when we get the reconciliation, that we will get a single reconciliation after design development? We've had 2 different numbers that we've been working with based on schematic design, which I think is.
As long as there's two different estimators, you're gonna have two different numbers.
My
So,
my
you guys-
understanding was that you guys would then get together though and pull together a single set of numbers for us.
Well, we'll go by our numbers. That's how it'll roll at the end. Because we're the ones that are like, gonna ensure that when we bid it, we're still within our budget. So, are you guys doing two more estimates, DD and
Yes.
CD?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I mean, the reconciliation of the estimate is really making sure that quantities, everybody's
Scope.
seeing the same thing. It's not necessarily that you're gonna end up with the exact numbers. It's,
That may have been my misunderstanding then, because I had thought when you reconciled, eventually you'd say, O&G's here, Tecton's here, we've come together, here's the number we've come
Yeah.
to agree on that the committee then worked with. Instead of having two separate numbers.
our experience has been that hasn't happened. If that needs to happen, then we can, I guess, have a conversation about it.
Well, as I said, it may have just been my misunderstanding. Jeff, you're not,
No, I mean, like they said, the purpose of the estimates is to make sure that we're on track in terms of scope for the bid packages, and ultimately all that matters is the GMP, so.
right.
all right, okay.
Can I just say regarding that review period that Laurel mentioned, there are also other reviews that this committee will need to consider, such as both schools are likely what's called a threshold project, which will require a third-party structural review of the buildings, and we'll need to have a conversation with the building officials not all the time, but sometimes due to the size of these projects, they sit that review with the local fire marshal and building official would overwhelm the overall operations of kind of day-to-day permit review. So typically, or not typically, but occasionally, municipalities will hire a third-party code reviewer to review the documents during that period. So both are actions that you have time to discuss and prepare.
A modest suggestion that is it in here, Laurel, to put out an RFP to?
If you go back to page 1, I only have the local code review. I don't have the structural, the peer review contract, so I have to add them.
Most of our projects have been getting both lately, just because of the capacity of the reviews, plus an independent code. Yeah.
Do it once.
Yeah.
It's too much for the town, do it once.
So we'll carry another line item in
It
the
would be
schedule for
approved,
that, just to
so it
track
doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
Because you have to put it out to.
Do we do it at the same time as the local code review contract? We do it at the same time?
Yes.
Because I'm targeting that for February, like in February after DD is done.
That should be, because ultimately that set needs to be prepared and vote and acted on by both the building committee and the Board of Education. And all of the documents that you generate for pre-bid conformance review need to represent the same origination date of the documents. So we typically, what we do for our pricing set for CDs, we bring it to 95%, and that's that date that initiates the third-party reviews, the constructability reviews, and the CD estimates. And ultimately, the date of those drawings are what get put on all of the state documentation. So that's when those reviews should happen.
Right, so to hire them, I
Right,
want to
what-
hire at the same time as the local code review, which is right after DD, because then we have an idea of the project.
Okay.
Hiring
You
them.
could have just told me to be, so now be quiet
Yeah.
and
So when does the RFP have to go out?
Well, I got it, I'll put it on, well, I just say contract, meaning that's when you gotta get the RFP out. You want me to say RFP
Well, I
instead
need,
of contract?
I need a document that you send out that I will get that process started.
I would hire the third party right at the end of DDs.
You would or you would not?
I would.
Right, so that's kind of when I have it, February 21st.
So you're gonna wanna have the RFP out at least a month before that, right?
No, that's when you start hiring them.
That's when you
They
start
don't need,
hiring.
you
Oh,
don't
okay.
need them until July 25th.
Right, they're
Oh,
until,
wow.
until the documents are done in the CE
Oh,
phase,
Plenty of
so.
time.
No, I would disagree. The third-party reviewer needs to be fully familiar with the structural, and he can do that at the end of DDs.
We've typically done it at that threshold in the July date, only because you want basically the final comments. The reason why there's from July 25th to the actual date of it going out to bid is because we're gonna go back and forth. That independent peer reviewer is going to go give a report, and we have to revise everything, go back and forth. So I guess the advantage of having a more defined set in July is that they're looking at basically it close to being finished. There's not, there's no jeopardy of, there's enough time to get all those comments addressed. If you want to go out sooner, sure, but it's probably going to be multiple reviews, I guess.
I would rather they be familiar with the project.
Sure.
Rather than wait until the last minute.
What's that do to cost?
Going earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Shouldn't
then
be
if you're asking for
Place
a
the
separate
work
review
by
or
doing an
not.
extra review, it's gonna be more.
Right, typically they're doing one review with basically the completed set of documents.
It's like the peer
right?
review.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're asking for an interim review.
You're not asking for an interim review, just asking for them to get familiar with the project. That's not a review.
So you mean just bring them
Just
in
a-
a little bit earlier so
Right.
that they can get a little bit of up to speed time before they look at the documents?
Yeah, what's the concept?
That's fine.
Couldn't you make the DD available, like during the RFP as like a reference or something?
Not just put them ahead of the local code review.
Yeah. About a month ahead.
Yeah, that shouldn't impact the cost then, right? As long as it's just like, look at,
No, as long as you're not.
because I was thinking of
Right.
this being 2 reviews.
Nah, it should be one.
It's just 1 review,
We're still doing the
should
one
be
review.
fine, yeah.
Okay. Well, okay.
Okay, so what's
Just make a note of that, to make sure it's clear in the RFP, because if I'm somebody proposing on that, and you're asking for me to do it when I have DD documents in February, I'm thinking I have to work on it twice as much, because I got till September to give you the finals.
Who's gonna generate that RFP?
We have to generate it, no?
You will?
Yeah, we've done it before, we've solicited these services, so.
Okay, so I think I was
Were
on
you gonna
page.
do that, Jeff?
Not anymore.
He's smiling.
Usually
Right,
like-
so at-
usually like the fox in the hen house.
So at the bottom of page 3
I'll let
was
you
where I
two talk.
was. So we had the North End SDR on the 19th. No, yes.
Yep.
No, that's not right.
No.
When the heck did I have it? It wasn't the 19th. Just this week, wasn't it? Wasn't it just Wednesday?
It was.
Hey, yesterday?
Yesterday.
That's funny. Holy mackerel. Okay, so I need to change this to the 13th, sorry, and it's an actual. Right, it was yesterday. All right, and then flipping over, we have on the 27th, which is a Wednesday, that's the Norton. I've since segregated out the DDRs. We do not have these scheduled,
What
but
page are you on?
I'm on top of page 4. These are just falling in with when we were done with all our reconciliation, and I just push these out. These are not scheduled, but they're targeted for North End and Northern. That's the next round of going up to talk to Barbara, because once you get assigned a reviewer, it's usually the same reviewer. And then what follows is just boxed out of upcoming local approvals, the regulatory approvals. I know Tecton had a pre-application meeting. That was on, I think it was at the end of August 31st. And that was for both projects. So now we're gonna be starting the local review process. So, just boxing what's up and coming. I know they're still working on their traffic study and what needs to get done with that. And we got the P and Z and the inland wetlands all coming up. That's for North End.
Do we know when we're gonna see that traffic study? That's something that keeps coming up as I talk to community people.
The only thing I heard was that was gonna be done by the time they went to actually do their submission to P and Z. So you can see that I have like towards the end of November, but I don't know if they can get anything done sooner. That's basically what Vanessa informed me. So these are just up and coming, coming up, so we don't lose track of them. That's those particular reviews, and that's it. After that, we've got more time for other items. So I will add the threshold review, and I'll put it after the holidays. I'll put it after like January 15th to start working on it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions on this?
Do we need stuff or working?
Do we need what?
Stuff.
That's
or-
No, I was told that let's see, hold on, there were two different schools, so what was North End? Do I have it in here?
You have it for North End.
I have it for North End and not for Norton. We definitely do not need anything for Norton. And yes, we do need OSTA for North End.
We'll confirm that. I did not think that was the trap according to past.
There's notes here.
Quick question too, I can get through that.
Let's see, North End. He says this project will most likely require an administrative review, as it is not likely that off-site mitigation will be required to a state route. But maybe because he definitely said I didn't need it for Norton.
Yeah, it's not the full host of process, I guess
Right.
is what he's
Yeah,
saying.
definitely, clearly on Norton, he says no OSTA required as we don't exceed 100,000 square foot building or 200 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You are enlarging the building in some way that I didn't
You
know?
want to be on the front page of the Cheshire Herald?
Yep.
The town, under town approval pre-application meeting that was on the 31st, what is that?
It was, I don't know, were you there? Who was at that?
Yeah, that was in this room. There are minutes in your packet today. It was set up by our civil engineer just as a informal meeting with, I think by the end of it, all of the department heads were involved in the meeting just to become familiar with the project.
And bringing the town officials up to speed, basically.
We typically like to do that, and we will periodically schedule those as we approach construction documents, just to make sure that we're having these check-ins informally, just to make sure, especially, public safety, fire, building official, just to keep them in the loop of where they are, if there are any concerns, et cetera.
That's it.
Rich, budget?
Yeah, the budget hasn't changed. We brought on board the hazmat consultant, and we've encumbered those funds in the Norton project. There wasn't one for the North End project. One note I do want to make is, in conversations that I've had with the hazmat consultant, Tipton's going to have people out there doing test pits, and we thought it would be good to get soil samples. That is not included in the soils testing is not included in the hazmat in the hazmat proposal. So I've asked Eagle Environmental to get us a proposal, and we don't have a proposal at all for North End because nothing was being done there. So with the property, it being a farmland property, I think that was raised in the SDR meeting the other day, that we do want to get some soil samples for that too.
So you'll be bringing that to us at a future meeting?
Yeah.
All right, any questions on the budget? All right. And the open item log. This is something new. And Chris and I have had multiple conversations on this. We wanted to make sure that we have something that allows us to closely monitor issues and questions that are before this committee, some of which have not been resolved yet. So we asked Rich to put together a first draft of that, and go ahead, Rich, run it through.
Okay, so this open items list is derived from a couple of sources. One is the ed specs, which I think there were probably a dozen or so questions on things that were in the ed specs. So we incorporated those into the open items list. A lot of those items had been addressed and closed, but they're on here because I wanted to just bring them forward. we can have that discussion, and then we can all agree that they're either closed or they should stay open. Some of those items were also then in the comments that were part of the SD process. And I think Jeff and Justin had responded to a lot of those. I think there were about 80 items that came in with the SD designs. Tecton responded to those. A lot of those items in reading over the comments were closed, and I just wanted to put them on this log also. I think that the way that some of those things were answered, they're still open items because they're going to be in process. They're part of will be addressed during design type of response. So those were incorporated here. And then lastly, I think there have been some comments that were collectively put out there in these building committee meetings that we put at the end of this list. Now, this list will, it'll be in a live document that will have items that get closed as the committee agrees to that. We'll have other open items, and then we will. What I'll do is on a weekly basis, or bi-weekly basis when we have the meetings, we'll print this without the closed items so that you don't have to see everything. They will be there. We'll just hide the column, or we'll hide the rows.
How would you like to go about the process of adding items to it? I could see where in our conversations, somebody would throw out an idea. I want to make sure that it's clear the procedure that we should follow to add it to the open item list.
Yeah, I think it should be clear as to whether or not this is an item that is worth tracking, and or if it's just a suggestion that somebody throws out there. So if we all agree that this is a open item, then I'll include it for incorporation into the log, and it'll be on the log for the next meeting.
So for the most part, it could probably be just a consensus of the committee, or we could take a formal vote. But it shouldn't just be a comment that one person makes.
I don't think it's a comment, and I don't think it needs to be a formal vote, because I think that would certainly prolong the meetings. But I think that it should be an overall consensus of the building committee.
So if we have an issue or an item, I'd say, this is something I'd like to add to the open item list. Is that okay with everyone? We all nod. You add it up.
Yes, correct.
Right now, what you'd like people to do, obviously not this evening, but since this is the first time they've seen this, and we want to make sure it gets put onto our Google Doc for people to look at, but you would like people to go through all of the closed items and make sure that they agree that those items are closed.
Correct.
And then on any of the open items, if there's any questions or concerns, so that this is, a first draft, but by our next meeting, we should have this thing off and running.
Right. So I'm gonna give you an example. I think number 5, emergency backup batteries. So the way it was responded to by Tecton was that the design team will review and respond. So I think that what we want to do is to track that as we continue in the design process. That may be something that is being addressed by Kohler Running, and if it is, then that's something that we can log here, and then we can close that item. I think the generators, item number 7, actually 6 and 7, those are open items only because I think that that was something that as far as sizing goes, whether or not it's a warming center. What's going to be on the generator is still being determined. So,
And when I spoke with Chris on this, he suggested adding this target date, which isn't populated right now. But one of the reasons is as this list gets longer, we may want to hand it to you by which dates are coming up soon, so that we can monitor those more closely.
So as an example, number 14, the project labor agreement. We've collectively talked about that here in the committee meetings, but we've also talked about that as a project team in our biweekly calls with ONG and Tecton. And we've acknowledged that, that's something that is still an open item with the building committee, but that, there were other pressing matters that needed to be addressed, and that's why it hadn't been put on the agenda for the committee. However, for the project team, it was important to understand that at some point, that decision will start affecting the cost of the project. So that's when it was decided that had to be resolved before we got to the design development cost estimates.
So I'm hoping actually if we're clearing up schematic design issues this meeting, that either the next meeting or the first meeting of October, that would be on the agenda. Because that's gotten kicked down the road a month or so, but we had so much going on that wasn't something we felt we could deal with right now. But I'll talk with you about that.
One comment I have is that I think this is great. If there's a way to, if we designate Norton as the letter A and New North End as the letter B, since we can't use N and N, then we could maybe have a column here that says which school it applies to, whether it's A or B or A and B, because I would think somewhere, 6, 8, 10 months down the road, this emergency backup, we closed it out and the response was, we're going to do this, but for which school?
For which
Does it
school,
apply to both?
yeah, good point.
So you might want to do that. And the other question I have is, when items get closed, I agree not bringing everything to the meetings, like 20 pages, a year and a half from now. But is there a way for us to see everything, so that if there's something on our mind, like, didn't we talk about that? How do we go back and look to see that we?
Well, it will be a Google Doc.
It's going to be a Google Doc that everyone has access
So
to.
you'll just filter.
Not everyone can put items
Yeah, for
on
the
it,
meeting, I'll just.
but everyone can.
Yeah.
Well, we can look at the document and see the whole thing.
Right.
You're just going to bring a subset to the meeting. Perfect.
Because it's just a spreadsheet, right?
It's a spreadsheet.
All right, any other comments on this? The one item that I had asked Rich to put on here was the gym floors. And I don't know if everyone's aware of that question. But right now, as Justin was talking just before the meeting, the ed specs have, on one building has a poured floor, and the other building has a wood floor. And there's been discussion about, well, which one would we prefer? And I assume we want the same in both schools. Jeff sent out some emails to staff members who also sent emails out around the state. And he's been getting a lot of input. I don't know if Jeff, you want to.
Yeah, Vin actually sent one too, and we both were soliciting different people with experience in the field. It's interesting. It's interesting that it was almost universal from PE department chairs around Connecticut saying, wood floors. We had synthetic and we've switched, or we built a wood floor over a synthetic floor. It's interesting. One of the drivers is like scooters. I guess a lot of the little kids use scooters in the elementary grades, which don't work really well on the rubberized flooring net. So it's interesting. That was just I would say, overwhelming feedback from PE teachers across the state, plus our own PE department chair was saying that. So
I think the other side of the point is the maintenance of the wood floor is more. And when I say more time, not necessarily more costly, but I just don't remember, what was the cost difference of installing wood versus the
Well, we
wood
asked
floor?
that today just before you came in, and we had two very different numbers. I think we need to go back. But, Justin said they did it. Well,
We had a project alternate on another project, and the cost was approximately a $20,000 difference. However, the feedback that we're getting, that Laurel had indicated with her cost estimators at ONG, is that it's closer to a $60,000 change.
so we're 20 to 60.
So 60 grand more for the wood, right?
Oh, hold on,
Just making sure.
it's in our estimate.
It's
It's
already
our
in there.
estimate right now.
For
We have wood
Norton.
floor.
Yeah.
For both schools.
For both schools.
So it's already in there.
It's already in there, so if you want to save some money, we can take it out.
So is the school district ready to make a
That's
recommendation?
something that we don't want to, you know,
Is the school district ready to make a
if
recommendation?
you buy
or do you
cheap
want more?
shoes in the wrong size, it's not gonna help you. But,
So what you have here, just if you want to pass it around, this is actually what we did in the West Gym at Cheshire High School, probably about 6 or 7 years ago. So this is all the subflooring, and obviously this is the flooring that's on the top, right, which is maple. I think the idea is you probably have similar subflooring structure, although I'm not the expert here, and then you would put, one of these two on this. I'm not sure, it's just a color difference. This one looks kind of cracked, which is a little off-putting, I guess. And I was like, well, is that going to happen?
Is this a
And I
setup
said,
to?
No. Listen, I mean, my thought was, you could do, you want to save money at Norton, you could do one of the port floors at Norton, set up a wood floor on the new north end, because we don't have any hardwood floors up on the north end, so that's an option. But I'll just, if you guys want to just take a look at it. I don't know that you can make a decision based on.
I
what
think
you
the
have
other
there.
variable, following Vin's point there, it is a little bit difficult to have different floors on different places from a curricular perspective. If we're saying that, the scooter thing is been an integral part of what we do with little kids. However, looking at it from a community use perspective, I think the only argument that I could really stand behind for a poured floor on the south, on one of the two buildings, doesn't matter which, in my opinion, geographically, Ben's argument makes sense. But the only thing I think I could stand behind is if we knew that the poured floor was much better for something like winter guard, or baseball practice if you have to go inside. If it had superior durability under those conditions, because winter guard has been a challenge for us in terms of where to use it when you're banging those hard objects, whatever they're using, the guns or whatever, against the floor. They'll ding up the floor pretty good. So just if that was the case, then maybe you could make the argument, but I don't know that.
Did we ever get any response from Park and Rec or anything on this?
I don't recall that. I can look real quick, but
That would be worth knowing what they
their
say.
perspective.
I don't know if, I'm guessing that the materials today are more advanced than when I was in high school. But when I went to Notre Dame of West Haven, and they had put one in while we were there. It was brand new.
Port floor?
Yeah. And everybody thought it was really cool. But everybody has to walk around a certain perimeter. You have to have a certain type of shoe on. Any presentations with cheers, you had to put something down first. So it actually limited the use to being like a high maintenance item. In order to use it for something other than basketball players with basketball shoes bouncing a basketball, you had to have a special, whether you're putting down a tarp or masonite, or just making sure people didn't have any black soled shoes, that sort of thing. So like I said, that was 10, 15 years ago when I was in high school, so it may not apply today. But I graduated in '87, so I'm sure I'm sure materials have advanced. But I do remember that was one downside that everybody in the school was like, "What a pain."
If you put in a hardwood floor, is it a floating floor or is it
Typically, yeah.
typically?
Yes,
That's what I've seen.
That's what we did at the West Gym. It is a floating.
It is, okay.
Yeah, in order to maintain the dimensional stability and the comfort level,
Has to.
you lower the slab on grade, the structural slab by, depending on which system, if it's a Robin sports floor, it's anywhere between 2.5 inches to 4 inches, depending on how thick the rubber absorbers are in the sleepers, et cetera. So you lower the slab so that as you're walking from the conventional floor to the wood athletic flooring, it's even. You got to provide a vent around the base, a coved vent, so that the goal is to not have any buckling in the floor due to atmospheric issues.
Okay. So the school district's not yet ready to make a recommendation on this? You want to?
No, I would want to put a ball on it before we come back to that.
So
Probably the next meeting.
next meeting? Okay. Okay. Right, anything else on the open item tracking log? Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right. The fun part. Well, actually, this should be pretty quick. When you met last month, 3 weeks ago, you made a number of decisions regarding the North End School. And not everything was in front of you while you were doing that. Some of the lists weren't complete. So I did ask Jeff and Justin if they could send me the updated list as to what was voted on, what was accepted. And I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to take a look at it and make sure that everything that was on there was what you thought you were voting for. So if you want to take just a couple of minutes and look through it, and if you have any questions, we don't need to take any further action unless there's some issue that you have.
The only question I would have is, does this check with your numbers?
Which one's that, North End?
This is from last meeting.
Yeah, I know, I
in the
didn't
North
bring
End.
that with me. I'm sure we didn't jive all the way, because we never did.
The accepted.
Oh, yeah, the
BS
accepted list,
WBM
yes.
numbers are.
Values are off,
Yeah.
are
But
slightly different.
Yeah, I didn't bring it with me. Yes, that we have the same list of items, just not the
Right.
same dollars.
So where are you dollars?
But it's whatever I brought last time and I don't remember it.
My recollection
You
is
have
that we were,
At the end?
our estimate was showing with the accepted value management items, approximately half a
No, it's
percent over budget,
North
and
End.
O and G's
North
numbers
End.
were approximately.
And I didn't bring North End.
Huh? Revised it because it was being revised during the meeting.
Yeah, you're right.
Might actually be in your meeting minutes. It is,
North End?
did I get it? With my recollection.
You sent that out the next day.
I would have to look it up.
Yeah, they revised it after the last.
I just gotta go find it.
Any other questions regarding the North End at this point? If not, then I'll move along. If you find that, some schematic design review for Norton Elementary, discussion approval of value management suggestions. And hopefully we get to a point where we're approving the schematic design. Justin, Jeff, I hand it off to you.
So I think, well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I think the agenda has us getting right into the value management recommendations. So one of the things, I don't know, you think we should get into this first? So one of the things after our last building committee meeting, where we in particular discussed a number of, or the potential for some differing mechanical options at Norton than we have accepted at North End, specifically a full geothermal well field system at North End, and based on where we were in the budget for Norton, the potential to possibly not pursue that. So Kohler Ronan had identified a couple of additional options that are labeled in, so first of all, in your packet, there's a double-sided 11x17. On the back is our MEPFP options. And the one that we wanted to highlight is item MEP7F, and it's also up on the screen now in terms of what we would call a hybrid geothermal well system, or a hybrid system using a partial geothermal well field for heating and cooling. And basically what this does is we continue with the chill beam system and water heat pumps from the geothermal well field system for our classrooms, all of our curriculum spaces, with the exception of our gymnasium and our cafeteria. So the two largest spaces in the building, we would, instead of having a water source DOAS unit, dedicated outside air system, on the interior of the building using that fuel from the geothermal well fields. we would place those, they would become more conventional units, rooftop mounted units. And they would be, have electric resistance heat. So we would have packaged rooftop heat pumps with electric resistant heat, which that would be for backup only, which are on the coldest of cold days. That would provide some additional heat in these spaces. So there would be one for the gymnasium, one for the cafeteria. The net result of this option 7F consideration is that we would be able to eliminate 38 geothermal wells. We would keep 50 wells for the water heat pump and chill beam system. And in terms of an efficiency, we would become slightly less efficient. But we would still be within our target pathway 2 for Eversource of being in an EUI of between 25 and 30. It would continue to be a non-carbon fueled building. So we would not need to have any gas or propane available.
Just,
No propane at all?
it says use NG fired heating water boiler. And 7F on the backside there.
But that's
That's natural gas, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
The revised, so we've been looking at D, E, and F, several different options. The revised description of MEP 7F is up here, and we just got the numbers yesterday from the estimator. So after we had our last meeting, I think there was some, conversations relative to the types of systems. So we kept on trying to rack our brains and push Cole-Rona to get a happy medium. And the biggest chunk of savings is really the geothermal wells. So we were trying to find that balance. So this isn't, so 7F isn't atypical of what we've done in other buildings. So the buildings that you walk through had essentially the same thing. We had rooftop DOAs. The two that you walked through for our
Oxford and
yeah,
Bridgeport.
a little different because they had gas going to as the fuel source, but they had rooftop DOAs, and so it's a common system. So we're keeping the chilled beams and using the geothermal wells to basically fuel that piece of it, right? And then the DOAS, the fresh air, is really energy recovery wheel and pulling in the rest of it.
It's an electrical system rather than a natural gas.
A large majority of the energy, though, is going to be pulled through the geothermal wells fueled. The DOAS is the only piece that, but those are heat pump heat pump systems on the roof there, so they're not like regular package. I know you use the term packaged rooftop units. We're not talking like 1980s package. We're talking about heat pump packaged DOAS units. So they're very efficient. Hence the minimal difference in EUI. So it's closer. We were trying to keep the systems closer and similar together. And and one thing that Justin didn't mention is the reason why Cole-Rona is not here is because they have a company-wide office celebration.
25th anniversary.
So I couldn't get anybody not to attend.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask if
Right.
Craig could come to the next meeting to go into more detail,
Yeah.
but
But I think, we worked a lot on this over the last 2 weeks because of the kind of the resistance we heard from just defaulting to like either a propane or natural gas or, some other fuel source. So we think this is a decent kind of combination.
what's the negative side to this versus if we went to propane or whatever?
So we had that conversation today, and
On the 17th.
So here's a summary.
there isn't a real negative. I think if you went to the natural gas or propane, it would likely be propane fired backup your EUI would just go up. So we were trying to stay closer to the step 2 with Eversource to maximize your grants. We were trying to balance all of those different kind of variables. So
as well as keep both schools on a pathway to at least be net zero ready. So one of the things with providing an all-electric building is that you leave the option open for rooftop photovoltaic to help offset some of that energy, that electrical consumption.
So one of the downsides is that when you pull 2 DOAS units, or 3 really, onto the roof, you're dropping the amount of area that you have for future PV. So that is a downside. That's probably the number one downside.
But you've got a fair amount of flat roof up there.
You do. There's a calculation, and we'll send it for record that Colaronin did, looking at the potential PV arrays to see what percentage the building would require, what percentage you would get on the roof if you did a PPA. It might be a little different than if you had a PPA consultant in looking at it, but we can send you that. You're not, on both projects, you're not going to get 100% coverage on your roof. Just the buildings are too large, so you'd have to do some other kind of means to get there. So.
The option 7F sounds like you got a little bit of everything, right? So you got low geothermal, you got a couple different other units up there. And then like more stuff that can go wrong versus having just one unit that you have replacement for, maintenance on. Now you have maintenance for 3 different systems, right?
You always had the equipment. It was really how you fueled it. So you're not adding pieces of equipment anywhere. You're just changing the fuel source to it. So yeah, there is, I guess there's 2 different types of fuel source now, right? Because there's heat pumps on the roof that are going to be electric, but it's not like we added, a bunch more units. It's the same amount that we would have had anyway.
Yeah, some of these other options, such as the VRF and DOAS systems, those would be examples of systems that have higher maintenance requirement, annual maintenance. One of the things that we always hear about VRF is, geez, I gotta change 100 filters annually, right? Or check 100 filters, et cetera. And I know that was one of the things when we had a meeting with facilities that system.
That was crossed out quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a unit for every room, fueled by, heat pump and ERVs on the roof. But so this system still minimizes the moving parts from a maintenance perspective, and the moving parts are outside of any kind of educational space. So all of that distribution that Craig went over, the heat pumps and the way that works doesn't change. So. The downside is that they're now outside on the roof. There's a little bit of impact there, but I think on this particular building, actually on both, there's some pockets where these units can be kind of concealed, and access to them would be relatively easy because we have a second floor. So if we put them on that first floor, I think we can do it in a way to locate them in a sensitive way. Yeah, in a nice, in an efficient way too, from a plan efficiency. So.
Well, for me, this is way over my pay grade. I trust you guys. I would like to have someone like Craig come next meeting.
Yep.
I would be willing to approve it, tentatively, with that understanding that, we be able to delve into it a little bit more, but at least in terms of budget. Seems to me, from what you're saying, is it's a good solution for saving a couple of $1 million. It's getting our budget much more clearly in line. And at the same time, we're keeping a fairly good energy efficient system.
Justin, did I understand? I think I misunderstood. I thought you had mentioned that going with electric, that maintains our ability to go with PV.
It does. Yeah.
But if we went all natural gas or all anything else, we could still implement PV and still get benefits from the PV. There's nothing that precludes, right?
No,
would going with a different system make photovoltaic no longer an option?
yeah, if you went with gas, your load for electric would go down, right?
We're still looking at a 2,000 amp service. I mean, we're still got a lot of power that we would still benefit from the PV.
I'm not saying you wouldn't benefit from the PV, but you know, when you change your fuel source to gas or natural gas or propane, the electric consumption would change. The model would change. So, yeah, I don't. Any one of these options, you still need electricity for your building, so you could put PV up there. I think the challenge with both sites, quite honestly, is if gas was there, it would be a different discussion. It's not. So, you know, we're 3,000 plus linear feet away, and there's a lot of questions related to that path to begin with. So
But the question wasn't about gas. I just wanted to clarify. I mean, even if we did have gas that was there, surplus gas, there were plenty of it, and it was easy and free and everything, it would still behoove us to discuss the possibilities of PV.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be precluded, right? It's still another item.
No, you're absolutely right.
I just wanted to make sure I heard, because I didn't want,
Well,
I
my
didn't want anybody to think, or even myself to misunderstand, to think that we should cross that off the list if we went with gas.
My comments were related to pathway to net zero for an electrically based building. So you're absolutely right. You could have, that system in any one of these.
Yeah, just because I know that's gonna be something that, as a committee, we're gonna have to decide what we want to do or not. Just, I don't want to go into it thinking it's already no longer an option.
yeah, it's always there. Yep.
So,
Thank you.
go ahead.
I was just asked if there's any other questions on the energy. So with the idea that we'd be bringing engineer in the next meeting to give us more detail. Ben?
The only question I have, and you may not have an answer tonight, but the operating cost of buying electricity, to power those rooftop heat pumps versus propane, let's say, is it much different? Is it relatively the same? Because I hear electric heat, and that,
Sure.
of course, makes me nervous.
Yeah, understood. We owe you the life cycle costing of these options and then the utilities consumption calculations. I know Craig has them on a kind of on a higher level, but it's that. So I think we could bring that back to you. We can bring more detail to this system, and we can bring the life cycle costing, which I heard I think earlier, as part of a package presentation. And anything else you'd like to throw on Craig's plate while he's
Yeah. We can call him right now.
Coherent response.
He's partying.
Right, I know. They said that we're gonna schedule a 7:00 meeting tomorrow morning, just to punish him for not being here tonight.
I think this is a really strong idea, and I thank you folks for working through this all, because I think it's a really great meeting in the middle where we can still keep some of it without being completely fossil fuel related, which, as you all know, because I say it at every meeting, I feel really strongly about.
And your numbers and theirs are almost identical in terms of savings on
On that line.
On that one.
On that one,
Yes.
yes.
So if you,
There was still like $1,000 difference or something, but there was some difference, but it wasn't much.
so if you'd like, I can go, that can kind of allow us to segue into
Wanna
the
go
greater
right from the
thing.
beginning?
So while we're on the back, just as a reminder, so we understand where our baseline is, at least from our estimate and our consultant's estimate. Our approved construction budget, $62,293,000. Our reconciled schematic design estimate, $72,914,028, for a variance of approximately $10.6 million, which is a 17% overage. So we have set this up in a similar graphic way that we've presented before. The items that are in the green column are what our recommendations are. The items in yellow are the less desirable recommendations, but still available to this committee. And the items in red are the least desirable amount. There are some numbers that are on here, and as we get into them, I can describe them a little bit more fully, that if you take one, you can't take the other. We've highlighted those in gray a little bit further down the board here. There are some items that you'll see are in NA. We've included all of our value management accepted recommendations from the north end in this. If they're NA, it just may mean that they weren't provided in the Norton schematic design, but it starts to give you a flavor of what the other items were for value management on the north end.
So shall we take it by section?
Sure.
General program related, G1 through G5.
Can I just ask a question before you
Sure.
go through? O&G's estimate, are we going through that separate, or are we going through that at the same time, like as far as what we're crediting? Because you guys are off more, correct?
Yes.
So you have
We
like
are.
13.5 over. So like, going into this, do we know where like the big variance is between these two? Like, you guys are close on everything but like 2 or? This is 3 million.
It is kind of mixed between a number of items, a number of line items.
We should try and keep track of that as we go through, because we're trying to keep both of them with it.
So,
What we're really trying to do here, though, is trying to work within a range. And I think what we had talked about and what we had recommended was if we're under 5%, at an SD level, we're close enough to being to budget where we can move on to DDs.
But you're only
So-
under 5%, like yours says accepted. We really haven't accepted them yet, right?
Right,
Those are not-
we just
Correct.
did it, yeah, we just did it so you could see where we would end up, we're 4.56 at the end.
Yeah, you're
ends
right.
up being 1%, whereas O&G is 5%, or just under 5%.
Yeah, and with respect to the overall variances, that's part of the reconciliation process, is if we have big deltas, that's really where we need to have those conversations in reconciliation. First, to understand where, to get the right scope, and that's why we, as designers and architects and engineers sit in on these so that we can help define exactly what the intent of the scope of the documents are. But for instance, if you have a unit that is, say, 100,000, whether it's square feet or linear feet, and you're off by $2 a square foot or $2 a linear foot, that's a $200,000 delta. We often can't necessarily reconcile unit costs, but we can certainly reconcile what the actual amount is.
And then before you go through it too, like what you guys have and accepted,
We'll ask them that.
recommended,
We
is the
have-
same as what you have, the
Yep.
same thing.
Correct.
With the exception of the very first one,
Right.
because that's where, we, our estimator agreed to come to 7.5%, which is in line with Tecton's estimate.
What they already
That's
Yeah,
what they already had.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I think your recommendation is a good one. So for DD, if we had the reconciled estimates from Tecton, because the divisions are the same on the estimate, from Tecton, from ONG, and then the delta, then you could just look down that list. and
As we're
see.
going through, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's something that makes sense.
Yeah,
And we could definitely do that on the next estimate to make it definitely more clear.
Okay.
Can we do something else in the next estimate?
There's the extra.
It doesn't matter who's right. You're using minuses and they're using pluses.
Sure.
Can we have the same?
So keep it on the jokes. Yeah, I get you, I understand. Yep, absolutely.
There you go.
Because I'm like, why are we going through this? We're 17% of the budget.
It's,
I'll take a poll.
part of our strategy. Yeah.
It's in the Google Doc. It's in the Google folder if you want.
Well, or you can just say you have a negative variance versus a positive variance.
Yes, that's like having a negative profit on a project.
You don't have any of those. Okay,
All right, so let's move along. G1 through G5, there's recommendations here, compressed program and circulation space by 500 square feet, reduce floor-to-floor height by 8 inches, both floors, reduce owner contingency, $457,000. Now, that owner's contingency, I wanted to make that clear. There was, when we gave the contract to the architects, it came in less than what we had budgeted. So we had added into our contingency 457,000 above what the original budget was. So we're not reducing the contingency from what we originally budgeted. What we're doing is just taking some of the excess that we had put into the contingency and saying, let's use it here to help us get back to the number we need to be at.
Yeah, when we adjusted the budget from what was submitted to the state for the grant application and what was approved by this building committee, there was an add to the owner contingency of $495,000. And as Rich said, it was because of some of the savings that were realized from the budget versus actual on the contracts that have been let to date. So, and in fact, it's not a reduction of the owners, it's a reduction of owners contingency, but essentially it adds this value to the cost of construction. So this is an add versus a value management suggestion on all the other items. This is the one item that is actually an add to the construction budget.
The 8-inch reduction, will that be in the people space or the utility space between floors?
Utility space.
Yeah, Craig was explaining that, in the last meeting, that, with the different heating systems, you compress and not feel it in the room.
One of the things about a hot and chilled water pipe system, you're not relying on the volume of air to push tempered air, hot or cold air. You're providing a constant temperature of air to the actual chill beams, which are then tempering the air to be either hot or cold. So what that allows you to do is lower the overall area of your ductwork.
So that's contingent though on keeping one of the chill beam systems.
I would say that's not, we'll be able to find, we were using 14-foot floors.
It'll be 3-foot plenum space, which we think is doable.
Yeah.
And from the last meeting, you're gonna look and see if we could do the same reduction at the north end. Can we do that there? And is there a savings?
The answer is yes, we can do it there. I don't know what the savings would be. We can calculate it, but that's something that, maybe we do that calculation and bring it back to you at the next meeting if this group's interested.
We dropped that on the list.
Put that on the open list. Is that all right with everyone? Okay, do we have a consensus?
Each reduction ceiling.
Mike, you know.
Oh, we want to put it to the north end. or
For the
we
north
probably
end.
want the north end.
To do a calculation and determination. So do I have a motion for approval of G2A, G3, and G4?
I'd move to approve G2A and G3.
Okay, motion has been made to approve G2A and G3. Discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Do we have a second?
I don't know if we had a second.
I'll second
We didn't
it.
have a
I'll
second?
second
You had
it,
a
yeah.
second, okay.
I think it's
Thank you
great.
very much. Do we have a motion to approve G4?
I'll move to approve G4.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Second. Discussion.
I would rather keep G4 in our bucket until design development is.
I can't disagree with you. I just don't know that we can get to where we need to go without those funds. That's the issue.
So G4, if I understand what you were saying correct, it was like, we had put that on top of what we had originally carried for contingency. Now we're just backing it out. So
Right.
we're back to what we had for the contingency.
Original.
That's right.
Really savings is what it was. It was
Yeah.
So if we
savings.
were okay with the contingency to start, why wouldn't we be okay with the same contingency now? Like what's changed?
Yeah, well, that's my feeling also. It was
Well, that's my
basically,
comment.
we were lucky in terms of some of the contracts that we had. And we were able to take that money and we just placed it in the contingency, giving us extra money above and beyond what initially Colliers had laid out and what we went to the state with. So this would just get us back to our original budget.
This is
Or some
outside, this is outside the design contingency and the escalation contingency.
Right, yeah, so there are a number of contingencies out there.
And we've had to make a lot of I felt like there are much harder choices on this building, and I feel like this is exactly what we should be using it for, is to get back some of the stuff that we'd really like to keep with this building. So I think it makes sense.
What I'd like to add though is that, I mean, you know, when we manage projects, we're always cautious about dipping into contingency this early in a project. We don't like it. We think it's a slippery slope, because if you're doing it here and you have problems in design development, you're doing it there, and all you're doing is pushing the problem down the road. We felt that because, as everybody's indicated, this is money that was a savings over what was the original budget, and it takes the owner's contingency back to what you originally thought it was when you submitted the grant application. That was something that we felt, you know, we were okay with, but we didn't want to go any further. As you can see, there was an additional reduction of 350. We did not endorse that. We don't feel comfortable with that at this point.
And I wouldn't support touching our basic contingency either. I just think that would be foolhardy at this point in the process.
And on top of everything else, it is the only way that we've been able to get to the number where we can then move forward with design development at this point.
Why are the contingency numbers different between O&G?
We were different even the last estimate, just because that's the design, that was the design estimate contingency.
It's because the percentage, if the percentage is the same, it's the
Percentage
subtotal of.
Okay, it's not flat.
Based on the trade.
Yeah, the trade costs are different, that's
Right.
why. So all those
So it's
percentages.
a percent number though, that's what I'm saying. It's not
Yeah,
like a
it
flat
is.
number was. Okay.
Correct.
Other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of G4, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, you got that, Rick?
Yep.
All righty. S1, balance site contours, including pavement structure, subgrade elevations, 440,000. S3, eliminate seat walls, 750,590. S5, provide standard concrete sidewalks in lieu of Hannaford concrete pavers, 245,860. S6, eliminate prefabricated bridges, 122,630. S7, eliminate frost-proof bubblers on site, 27,590. S8, provide CIP concrete curbs in lieu of 25% granite curbing, 40,370. S11, reduce plantings allowance by 50%, savings of 268,180. S13, move east entry exit to west away from the property line, eliminate shoring and retaining wall, 416,680. S14, reduce concrete sidewalks by 30%, 124,330. And S15B, reduce secondary access drive and bridge to Sharon Drive, retain the drive width at 8 foot, reduce the bridge and culvert structure to 50% width, 220,110.
If I could just, that last item, we know, we've heard both in our working groups and in our discussions with the district, but also in our department meetings with first responders that 100% we need to keep this access road to Sharon Drive. What this does is simply reduce the width so it's not a two-way travel. It'll be one way out to Sharon Drive or one way in, just depending on if there needs to be an ambulance or a fire truck that needs to get into the site.
All right, do we have any motions, S1 through S15B?
Can you clarify what S1 is for me?
Yes, that is, this was one that we also took on the north end. The balance site is basically saying that the amount of soil that we're taking out of the site, excavating, will be balanced with the amount of soil that we need to backfill for the site.
Thank you.
So moved.
So moved.
Can I ask real quick though on S13? I know what that means, but you know, in terms of impact to traffic flow, and how late in the game, if there was money available, you know.
You wouldn't want to put it back, it's just shifting it over a little bit to avoid having to put a wall up.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
ve-
How
it
far
was a
over are you
s-
shifting it?
It's a very.
So 15 feet.
Because I know like Brooksville traffic flow is always bare. Okay, I see what you mean.
That's-
That little
There's,
bump out there.
there's quite an elevation
Yeah.
change here.
Yeah.
And where we have the drive getting close to the property is gonna require a lot of shoring and a lot of retaining.
So you're just bringing it in.
We're gonna bring it in a
Yeah.
little
Okay.
bit.
Okay. Definitely. Makes sense.
You'll still
Yeah.
be able to have the field
So,
there.
Yes.
In my head, I was like seeing much different.
No.
That's
It just means that
minuscule change. Yeah.
the road,
Limits the amount of.
where you come into the
Site
site
work
now
you'll do,
is more or less, we're gonna maintain
Yeah,
that
right.
location.
Yep. Okay.
Dennis, you made a motion to approve each of the ones I just read, is that?
Yep, S1, S3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 13, 14, and 15.
All right, second,
I'll second it.
right? Conversation, discussion?
Can you show the area of the seat walls again? What's that do on this one? I don't remember.
Oh, it's a S4?
S3.
No, S3.
Well, this is already changed to reflect the limiting the amount of seawalls, but the original site plan had far.
We accepted it,
We,
right?
we anticipated that the building committee would be coming, but there were far more.
We're in tune here, yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry.
The original design anticipated more formed concrete walls with, say, bluestone cap and masonry veneer.
Yeah, and it was all, actually, there's still, it was all of these areas here that were seat walls that we think we can provide by some other more economical means.
Gotcha.
And how about the prefabricated bridges? Where were they and what's replacing them?
So they were joining the blue areas.
Oops, sorry.
Oops. So the blue areas were the play areas. Those changed a little bit from what you have last seen because of the working group sessions about trying to get some more play up over in here. So if you remember, there was more blue over here and they were in between those. So
I don't think there's much loss there. Other discussion? And seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Building exterior. Eliminate wood window slats, $150,221. Provide exterior storefront in lieu of curtain wall in select areas, 30% CW area, savings of $64,316. Provide Sembrit siding in lieu of Swiss Pearl horizontal, DE5, savings of $487,331. Do we have a motion?
I have a question.
Why would it
first.
be E6? We just keep dropping that. That was a north thing.
That is because our estimate, I believe, I believe our estimate assumes that was already.
Oh, okay, so you already have that?
Right,
Okay.
that is correct.
And so we're carrying it.
Okay.
That's right.
These are similar value management considerations that we have for the north end.
Do you have a question, Chris?
I did have a question on exterior. Something I see on every project I do, the first thing that gets VM'd is lightning protection. And I don't see it. I'm just wondering if, I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but it's usually somewhere around $1 a square foot, so close to 100,000, right?
I don't.
I don't know, I mean,
I can't remember.
I don't know what the town's position is on that. I don't know if a study's been
Lightning
done.
protection? I thought that was just automatic. No,
No, it's not.
you could have a building without lightning protection.
It's not not even
Yeah.
code required.
I think two, I know Chris asked me this question, our current buildings, I think only two have lightning protection, actually.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Two of the 8 buildings have lightning protection in the schools right now. Two little one, I know Chris, we know, I don't remember the other,
I
but
think Hummiston's the other.
So you're saying that that could be a substantial savings?
Well, if it's in there, because we don't typically do them on.
It was in the SD, it was in the SD narrative.
That's what I was looking to see if I had to print out the estimate. I don't know if the answer off the top of my head, if it was in the original estimate. I gotta do some digging.
That was in my questions. So I just
Chris,
feel
would
like
you
that's-
recommend we add that to our open item to investigate
You
that?
already-
No, I don't recommend adding it. I recommend keeping it on the open item.
Oh, is it in
Yeah,
there
I think-
already?
I think it's already in there.
All right.
And I think the suggestion was to do a study to find out whether or not it's needed or not.
Well, the
Well,
Connecticut School Construction, Design and Construction Standards require a study to be done, a hazard assessment. And there's a prescriptive approach
Yeah.
and there was I forget what the code is. But, it's not strictly a mathematical thing. It's about, okay, well, we have buildings in this area getting smacked all the time with it, so we do it.
Yeah, okay.
Or if we don't,
Okay.
but I just didn't know if we're trying to find every penny we can, if that's $100,000. maybe
Well,
it's-
that may be a future savings.
well, and it has to be determined whether or not it's carried in the estimate. If it is, then it's a savings. If it's not, then it's a.
Okay, well,
It's
we'll
the-
report back at our next
Is it
meeting.
in the
So that could, so if we ignore that now, it could still come up in DD.
Sure.
Review.
Well, it could come
For-
up
for
next
the-
meeting. I mean, that's the sort of thing that could easily be adjusted for at this point in time.
So the answer as of right now is if it's in the narrative, then it's in the estimate. We'll confirm that and get back to you.
And the dollar figure that goes with it. I don't think we have a motion yet, do we?
No.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
BA
uh,
3A,
for-
4 and 5.
So BE 3A, BE 4, and BE 5. Did you move all three?
Yes.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Second. Discussion? No discussion? All right, then all those in favor? Opposed? And unanimous. Building interior.
Before you go there.
Yes.
What was the reason that BE6 wasn't on your list?
We had already carried it as part of this estimate.
Gotcha.
So that's one of the examples of where we
There's
find
differences
deltas
between
today.
them.
So it should be voted in. You should vote on that item. Correct? It's in your number. It's not, we're taking it out of our estimate now. Right, so they're accepting that.
Sure.
Just, more than him, it has to be back, like, he has to add it back into his so that we're looking at a true bottom line
Mhm.
for that.
I think it's the value of the metal panel cost per square foot that is the delta. Is that, so that's why our estimator said, I estimated what the square foot that I saw in the documents. I think you guys did something maybe a little bit higher. So yeah, I guess if you want, you can vote it to whatever.
But if you guys did it on the square foot, then it's not really reconciled, right? Because I thought the reconcile was coming up with like a like number of square foot, and just disagreeing on the price.
Well, the quantity was agreed to, the cost per square foot wasn't. I think that's why we have that delta, right? Is that true?
I believe so. It's
Okay.
exactly like the Sunbrit siding.
Yep.
You guys have 47, we have 1 million. We agree on the quantity of it, but
Yep.
disagree on the.
So if you agree on the quantity and you're taking the value out, though, you should add the value back into the bottom line budget, huh?
We're actually making an adjustment though from more galvanized panels.
We have a credit of 102.
You're right, we're going from more galvanized panels in lieu of vertical numbers.
Right.
So it's just a different product that we're.
So the item, the description of BE6 is the same in both estimates. The reason why it's NA and Tectons is because our cost estimator carried it as a value. The reason why it's a value management item in O&G's estimate is I believe you were carrying a different unit cost or a different product there.
Correct, but right now, we're both carrying the mooring panel.
Correct.
Yes.
So,
Right, so
motion to
technically you should-
approve BE6.
Correct.
BE6 as outlined in,
In both
Oh,
of
and
In both, really, it's the same,
okay.
it's the same VE item, they're just not, they've already carried it in their estimate, we're making that adjustment in this
Okay.
exercise.
All right, so we have a motion to approve BE6, which is provide more galvanized metal panel in lieu of vertical metal siding. Second?
I'll second.
Second. Any other discussion on that? No? And all those in favor? Okay. Building interior. Provide linoleum tile in lieu of terrazzo flooring. $1,398,940. Provide linoleum tile in lieu of rubber flooring, $107,710. Provide ceramic tile on wet walls and toilet rooms in lieu of full coverage, $96,240. Provide 2x4 ACT in lieu of linear wood, $109,170. Reduce tackable wall covering by 50%, $110,370. Reduce food service per quote from Crabtree McGrath quote, $139,680. Reduce interior storefronts by 5%, replace with gyp partition, $325,950. Do I have a motion? Yes, Justin?
The one thing that I'll just mention is that these were all accepted value management items on the north end. They're the exact same ones.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Jeff? Do I have a second?
Yeah. Sean.
Sean did, okay. Discussion?
Yeah, BI 11, you guys have 5%, we have 50, so I just want to make sure.
Exterior
Is
furnace by
5
50.
correct?
Yeah, there's a big difference there.
Well, between the 5% and 50 is a big difference, so is 5% correct? Reducing storefront by 5%?
It's 50.
Yeah, for that value, it's 50. Yeah.
Alright.
So 50%.
Otherwise, that would be a $6 million store.
Yeah.
Right, so
We
BI
gave you
11
chunk
is
change.
50%. Reduce interior storefronts by 50%, replace with gypsum partition.
Remind me what that one means? Interior storefronts.
So interior, areas where we have interior, say, floor to door head height glazing, the window walls, base window. We think that we can be more targeted with where they are.
So by 50%.
Well, we'll also utilize hollow metal sidelights in lieu of aluminum.
So question, just looking at BI 6 and BI 11, this sheet comes up with round numbers, just shy of $500,000. And this sheet comes up with just shy of 30,000. That's a gigantic difference. How can we be that far apart?
Well, if Tecton was carrying aluminum in their BI 11, reduced interior storefronts, if they were carrying aluminum, then they'd have more of a credit to offer back. Ours is hollow metal, so we saw it as hollow metal as opposed to aluminum, so we have less of a credit to give back. That's just one reason for the discrepancy.
And is that typical when you're doing schematic design? Because there's still a lot of
Hasn't been
questions
decided
about
yet.
what's, yeah.
Right,
And one estimator looks at it one way and the other looks at it.
right.
When we get to design
There'll be less of
development, we
that,
will not
yeah.
have such huge differences.
Correct. There'll
With
be more details on it.
interpretation, right? Everybody's interpreting the information that they're getting.
Other discussion?
B112, what would be the reason to not take that?
Did we
I
have
like
this
the
at
school
North,
sample.
North End too? I think we might.
Yeah,
have
we didn't
that.
take it at North End. It was when we looked at this, our recommendations are to maintain the continuity between the North End and Norton School.
And we talked about the fact that the other elementary schools all have a platform/stage, and we didn't want these schools to.
I was just looking at the email one you had, and I didn't see it on there, so I didn't know.
I'm sorry, did we have a motion on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Then, all those in favor? Chuck, you all set?
B1 through B111, right?
B1 through B1.
Yes.
11, right. Yep. All right, structural, ST1, reduce structural framing from 11 to 10 per square foot. This was also on the north end, 353,790. Motion to approve. Motion to approve, second. Second. And I just want to reiterate that one of the questions that was asked by the Energy Commission people was, this will not have any impact on our eventually being able to put
PV.
PV on the roof.
It won't have an impact.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, moving along. MEP2, allow alternate controls, MFR vendor, 175,805. Eliminate radiant floor heating in the kindergarten, 129,624. Eliminate FM 200 gaseous system and teledata rooms, 73,578. Eliminate pre-action valve systems and teledata rooms. Utilize wet sprinkler systems, 49,052. And I'm going to hold MEP 7F for a second. Do we have a motion to approve MEP 2 through MEP 5?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, second? Second. Any discussion on those? I think all of these were in the north end.
Yes, they were.
Any other discussion? No? Then all those in favor? Okay. And MEP 7F, delete geothermal and substitute air and water heat pumps for air-cooled chiller. Now, you're saying that use NG fired heating water boiler, that is not active,
Should be
correct?
stricken, correct.
Okay. And that is a savings of $2,341,987. And that's as previously described. And
You put the description up there.
We need to amend the description.
It's not a full deletion of geothermal.
Partially.
Partial.
yeah, it says delete geo. Yeah, so the whole MEP 7F, we might need to redefine. Maybe we should make a 7G as noted here on the board.
Well, I think we can simply modify the description of 7F, which is a partial geothermal well system with the replacement of.
Yeah, 7F is correct on the ONG description.
Except it's using the word same as option, design option 1.
As design option 1, but provides only 50 geothermal wells in lieu of 88 wells, and similar to design option 2B with DOAS units and at gym and cafeteria units to be roof-mounted heat pumps air-to-water heat pump capacity reduced to 150 tons, but boilers deleted.
So do we have a motion to accept MEP 7F as defined by O&G?
Ask a question first.
Sure.
Where are we if we don't pay that one percentage wise?
Way over.
No, on yours, yes, but
We're the same.
Well, it's a $2 million item
Two
either
point
way.
3 million.
There would have to be an MEP VM suggestion that gets accepted, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, we were talking about 7.
yeah, I'm not suggesting not accepting it.
No, I'm saying is that if you don't,
Tabling it until
right.
we get
if
better
you,
description.
if you don't take 7F, you would have to take one of the other MEP suggestions. You would still be over because we didn't get to the number that we needed to get to. So it would be over the 5% target for ONG.
We would not be able to approve
Tecton's
schematic
numbers were
design.
closer. I think with, and Justin, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were talking about MEP 7D. Was that was the option that was talked about earlier in the week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, E and F were, well, 7D was the one that we talked about basically at the last meeting.
Yeah.
E and F were added after our discussion at the last meeting.
So with 7D, Tecton's numbers were below the 5% range. ONG's was still above the 5%.
Right.
Our intent was still to have the engineer come into next meeting and go give us a greater detailed description of exactly what the system is. So I think you could approve it tentatively based on, gathering further information in our next meeting, but allowing us to move ahead. But we need a motion of some sort.
I don't know if we can approve it tentatively, because if we don't like the description, so either it's approved or it's not. You can't go back on it if it's tentative, right? Because then we can't move forward with approving, what I'm hearing him say is, we can't move forward with approving the SD
Yeah,
unless
well,
we're in target, so you
yeah.
can't tentatively do it. and then
No,
go
I
back.
guess, I think you're right, yeah, we need to approve. I suppose if we had somebody come in next time and we started having some second thoughts, it's still early enough in the process that you could back out.
Cody must be over by now.
So just so I'm clear, what are the open questions related to this description? So that I can take.
I have none, I'm just not an expert in this area, and, so I'm relying on
I think
your
just getting
expertise
a
and knowledge.
better understanding as to where that leaves us in terms of future PD. Where is this equipment going?
Right.
And also electrical cost, I think, is part of it is electrically charged.
Yeah, well, any of the options you would have, utility consumption calculations
Right.
needed. So I think life cycle costing and utility consumption calculations can be provided.
I mean, personally, I'm excited that we're keeping a geothermal system, that we're keeping an all-electric building, that we have the ability to move towards net zero over time. And we're doing that with a savings of over $2 million from a pure geothermal system. To me, it's a win-win, considering that there's no way we can afford to stay with a pure geothermal system that we,
Right.
originally looked at.
Did we have that option for North End?
We did not, no,
Yeah.
and that, does pose the question at some point, do you consider it? But we did not.
No, through this process, we've kind of asked ourselves, team, is there anything that's on this list that we're discussing for Norton that can be retroactively applied to North End? This is one of them. I think Chuck referenced the one earlier.
Well, ceiling height, the
Yeah.
floor height.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm still waiting for motion.
I'll make a motion to approve MEP 7F as shown on the ONG description.
Do we have a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion? No discussion? Then all those in favor? Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? One abstention? Was there any other abstention? Okay. Very good.
To answer your question, Dennis, 3.07 over, we ended up at North End, ONG, 3.07% over
Thanks.
At the north end.
at North End.
I was just doing a comparison of what our VM log was on Monday. And ONG was at 5.11%, so they were slightly over using 7D.
So they're under that 5 now.
Now they're under. Yeah.
And what's the percentage for Tecton?
1% over budget.
1%.
Yeah.
We're here,
All right, do we have a motion to approve the schematic design for Norton School?
So moved.
So moved?
I'll second.
Seconded? Discussion?
So are we approving the elevations as they are? Or are they still subject to additional design?
Well, we have an update that we assume that we'd be going over this evening. That likely should probably preclude a vote for schematic design.
Do you want to do that first?
Yeah.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I brought Ernest all the way here, so.
He's still traumatized over taking the poles out of the front. Yeah. Go ahead, we have a motion and a second on the floor, and we are now turning it to you for further discussion. Where we were.
These were the very first concepts a few months ago, and so you'll see some drastic changes.
So some of the things that, some of the things that we heard, some comments for contemporary roof line, the entry volume, looks and feels like the woods. What's interesting is both in the kind of strengths and weaknesses. We heard comments that say it doesn't look like a school. Some people view that as a detraction. Some people view that as value added. Some of the other comments that we heard, criticism that we heard, the two schools currently are too much alike, similar but different personality from the north end. We expected the Norton to have more brick compared to the north end. The large classroom wing volume needs to be broken down, visually overpowering. We heard some comments, Motel 6, aircraft carrier.
Brady Bunch.
Yes. Some discussion about the entry canopy, less like a treehouse, more fitting into the neighborhood. So then we came back with, I think, the renderings that everybody has seen. And these were the ones that have been on our boards and were over this past weekend. Again, some of the comments in the plus category, contemporary roof line, the inclusion of more brick. We still have those comments about the large classroom wing volume needing to be broken down. Perhaps break up the volume at the teacher planning space so that we have a couple of different volumes to look at, and it doesn't look like one big one. Simplification of the entry canopy. The previous renderings had some qualities that grew on the committee a bit more after the previous meeting, and the local precedents may be influential from the church across the street. So Ernest, we'll pick it up from here.
Sure. So, from what Justin was saying, what you'll see here is a more simplified entry canopy, still maintaining the same look and feel, but we did reduce the area of the canopy. You'll see the renderings. Introduce more change in plane of material in the classroom wing, so you'll see we're trying to break
we're trying to break the datum lines of the brick, really integrating more the metal siding with the brick, and you'll see a little bit more of a clean break or a very definable break with the wing, trying to reduce the scale and the mass a little bit more. Reintroducing texture and depth from the initial sketch, and you'll see that in the next few renderings, informed by neighborhood scale and surroundings, and we really honed into a lot more of the tree house theme, and hopefully you'll see that in what you'll be seeing in the following renderings. So this is a view as you're approaching. We've got the admin wing here, the main entry. For the most part, this is pretty close to what you've seen, but we've developed a little bit more. The canopy, it's reduced further back, so there's a lot more area up front there that's not covered, but you could see we've done a little bit more development with the columns and the roof line. It's not, before it was coming out further on both sides. Something we did differently too, the previous scheme had this upper classroom out almost flush aligned with the bottom, with the lower level admin. And what we did is we rotated that upper classroom, and by doing that, we gave a little bit more length to the top, which then lengthened this expression of the roof line here. So not only are we expressing this as the main volume of the space, but we're taking that roof line, giving it a little bit more horizontality.
So that area up above, that was where the math or reading.
Correct.
Intervention.
Correct.
Okay.
It's still there, just.
Yeah, and we rotated it, and I think it reduced the mass here that was up in front, and it also pushed our roof line further back, because we had the roof coming out here. There was another butterfly roof that came out the same width as that classroom. So I think by just doing that, again, we're expressing the roof line much more expressively. We've got a little bit more definition. We started to integrate the metal siding more into the admin wing. Before that was all just brick. So it's a nice kind of layering of the materials and the integration of the materials. You can see some of the wood paneling that's integrated with the windows.
I think it's a much more approachable building, I guess, from a pedestrian scale. I think that move, turning it and having the 1/1, that 1-story portion on the left side helps it, from a scale and massing perspective. Kind of see it here.
So you can see now that this is the bus drop off with the canopy. Now we've modified the canopy coming into the cafeteria. A lot more of the same materials that lead over from the gymnasium. We've got the DOAS units behind this mechanical screen. You could see some of the expression with the brick that we're trying to create some layering, some shadow lines with the brick. If you can go back to the other slide, real quick, Justin. And then you can see on the right side how we've broken up that wing a little bit more. We went from the angled roof on this to a much more flat roof line. But what we've done is express the classrooms up on the second floor, as well as the kindergarten classrooms with the wood paneling. So where you're seeing the windows at the classrooms above, we've got some sun shading devices because it's on the south elevation, but that's more defined with the wood paneling. The wood paneling is also covered with the canopies, and so the longevity and maintenance of the wood is further enhanced with the
What's the corner?
canopy. So this is the stair.
Okay.
So before we had just a corner glass there, it was a pretty tall curtain wall. We reduced the height of that, but we also wanted to create a kind of peekaboo landing spot for the landing of the stair. And so that takes on the same expressions as say the kindergarten classrooms that are down at the lower level. We had a little bit more playfulness with the windows, so you could see there's a lot more playfulness with the windows in the kindergarten classrooms. It's hard to tell too. We've got this kind of what it's called, an antique patina color. It's like a greenish gray color tone. It's almost got like a metallic color, but it helps break up that's medium spot that we were talking about.
We moved programmatically on the upstairs. If you remember, we moved, I think it's teacher planning and specialized education to that location.
Yeah.
Which I think helps from a planimetric perspective for usability, but it also gave us the opportunity to kind of break, that piece up, which, kind of speaks to what's happening on the inside. Yeah, yeah.
And you
What's the maintenance on the wood panels you mentioned?
Well, we're looking at some cedar, so we're preserving it with a clear stain. It'll eventually gray, but you could slow the process using, say, like a boat stain. You could use a clear stain on that and preserve that kind of coloration.
So how often would the town need to do that?
As far as the stain,
Or whatever maintenance there is? I'm just trying to find out, we don't usually talk about maintenance on the brick.
there shouldn't be any maintenance on the wood itself, other than if you want to change or maintain the stain on that, you'd have to stain it every so many years, but we don't see an issue with that. Like with the cedar, you'd see in most of the homes. We could put a wash stain on it if you want to explore that, but right now we're showing like a clear coat stain.
Well, I'm not trying to change the design. I'm just asking what to expect for
There
longevity.
shouldn't be any maintenance to it.
And longevity of that, lifespan of that.
Well, cedar's around in Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. I mean, it's used a lot in East Coast. You don't see it a lot in school buildings, but it's
good longevity.
Maintenance free. Yeah.
I think to your point, I think you have to be selective where you use it on the facade, in particular on the walls. So we need to be thoughtful of where the overhangs are to protect it. It's not so much just the sun, but it's the weathering of the water and those kinds of things. So you see it on the underside of the canopies, which creates a nice warm feel. That you don't really have to do anything with, right? But when it gets on the facade, you have to be more careful with it. So that's some of that detailing we need to kind of work through, but it's a good question.
There's also materials out there that resemble wood, like now they've got metal with wood look, and there's also like the cement board panels as well that obviously are more maintainable. We wanted to introduce the wood. We talked about wood. We could also explore other materials if you think that's another.
The look will be fantastic. The question is fair about maintenance. I wonder about vandalism. Like if, depending on location, somebody spray paints that, I don't know what, I'm just curious about like how difficult is it to remedy that versus, brick is easy, relatively. I don't know how hard it is, just a consideration. But if it's underneath the second story, it's a little tougher to manage, obviously. Less likely to vandalize that.
We could also keep exploring the materials that, again, there are other materials that resemble the look of the wood. It's very popular. We wanted to stay authentic with the materials and keep it the wood. Obviously, we've got the wood tongue and groove deck. So exploring these materials is something we could keep going through with design development.
I would just jump out as one person's perspective, that this looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's a real nice version relative to the other one, just a nice version, period, but relative to the other one, it's really, really nice.
Yeah, you could see now we've really broken down the scale of the brick rather than that linear horizontality.
Sure.
Just a quick question, where it says Norton Elementary, is that a lighter brick, or what is the?
That's the wood panel up there.
Oh, that's a wood
The
panel.
cedar wood.
Yeah, I think that looks nice.
So elongating that classroom again gave us an opportunity to put that sign up high, right in between both drop-offs.
And I'm sorry, not to belabor this wood discussion, but if you didn't stain it, it would just weather like you see weathered cedar fences all over. It would just be that grayish color.
Silver.
Yeah, so you don't have to stain it. It would just
Correct.
weather.
It would, yeah, absolutely.
There are a lot of
We,
cedar houses that they don't do
Yeah.
anything to.
Yeah, they're
And-
very charmingly New England, that like salt gray.
They do get that way.
Yeah.
We've also done the same topical treatment you do for boats,
Oh, yeah.
underside of boats. So it holds the stain or holds the color much longer. Cool. So again, so you see a kind of panoramic view at the top, and then coming around the parent drop off. You'll see a little bit more of the expression of some of the bricks stepping, and so texturizing of the brick we feel really adds to the depth of what we're trying to do with the playfulness of the brick, the kind of treehouse ideas that we're looking to do on the interior as well. So this really sets up a nice theme that will bring us from outside to inside.
On the lower level, is the glass flush with the plane of the brick, or is it sticking out?
Yeah. So the projections are the wood boxes.
So the shelf is outside, not inside, and it could be more useful.
Right now it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
We're doing it on another school where, depending on where that sill is, in these spaces, it's lower. So it could be kind of like a reading nook.
Yeah.
You can,
And
your
these
kindergartner can put some pillows in there and.
These will also have the
Just
optical
as with the
windows.
fiber.
So they're lower to the ground for the younger kids to get at.
Yeah, the renderings look like a lot of landscape, trees, shrubs, flowers, etc. Does that represent the 50% we took out? Or?
That's the entire
There's gonna be
We'll
one
take out
tree, that's
50%.
it.
Is there any places you're gonna get trees on the whole
Right,
side?
that's the Charlie Brown Christmas
cover one
tree
of
is
the-
what we're looking for now, you know.
So can you go
Yeah,
back
look at all the flowers.
to the, I was looking at note one.
Who gets the sports cars?
Turns out what we got.
Yeah, right.
The top rendering.
It's just all people think.
So
Looks amazing.
It
where the cafeteria is, that entire, from where your hand is to the left, you're never gonna see that, because that's recessed. Right?
Never gonna see.
Well, from your view as you're approaching the building.
On that drop off.
You'll see it.
You'll see from like the stair to the left more than you will the right side.
You will- From to the left of the faculty dining, that piece is invisible. It's too far back
Oh, you mean from a building or site perspective?
from a building perspective.
It is-
Yeah, the
it is
glass
set
is
back.
recessed, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
you could pull it forward.
from where the mini is.
Yep.
To the left. The mini car,
Oh, right.
I think that looks really nice. From the mini to the right, that looks really nice. But when you put the two of them together, it's still not balanced. The right-hand side overwhelms the left-hand side.
That's the classroom wing versus we've got the admin and the gymnasium.
Right, so the right-hand side in my mind looks very composed, and the left-hand side looks really crazy. And I like them both, but together, they don't look like they belong in the same building.
Anyone else?
I think the right, if you look at the bottom elevation, that looks too urban. I agree that there needs to be a balance between the brick and the vertical siding, but I think the right-hand side has too much brick
So
The right-hand side is?
of the bottom elevation.
which is the right-hand side at the top.
Correct. But you don't see because of the trees.
You're saying there's too much brick there.
To me, that would fit really well in New Haven.
Maybe just that.
Not that, that's not a bad statement. It's just,
Yeah, more urban feel.
right.
Yeah, I wonder if it's maybe just right at that corner there,
Just a corner.
you know, because you're asking the brick to do something that it doesn't normally do, which is, you know, levitate.
But if,
Yeah.
if you bookend the right-hand side, the classroom way, with more glass, like the entrances, I think that makes it more balanced. Because then you have the same element at one end of the classroom way that you do at the other end.
Yeah, one thing we did talk about is that all the classrooms have the same kind of equality of windows. So to put a corner window into one classroom would be kind of the
Yeah.
only classroom with.
When we had the specialized ed in the corner, before we moved it in, there was an opportunity to get, you know, do something different. When you pulled it to the center of that portion of the building, that kind of went away.
Yeah, or do something with the roof.
Maybe
I
you want a long
investigate it.
slope.
That's an airplane from.
Maybe just something to end the corner there.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not seeing what you're saying there, Dennis, but I like the way it looks on overall. I think maybe that corner, there's like the brick that's above the open space there, maybe if that was just the vertical slats or something down
Bring
farther.
that down a little further.
I think it looks nice.
The other thing which
Actually,
I think Dennis was started to talk about, though, is on the far left corner, where you've got, it's indented getting into the cafeteria. And then you've got the utility closet that's sitting there, it's just a brick bunker kind of thing. You know, there's no windows or anything, it's a utility. So that very far left
Sure.
is a, yeah, I'm not crazy about that look at all because of it's the utility and then the other is so far in. I
Yep.
wish you could do something.
I think Antonia has a great idea for that corner, so.
Yeah, what you doing with that?
We'll
Putting a
develop
big tree in front of it.
No. We talked a little bit about the cognitive, you know, having the building be able to teach, but also be a tool for, you know, education. You know, maybe that wall on the left side, which flanks the cafeteria, which would likely have some staging for a lot of students coming and going. Maybe that's like an exterior, you know, chalkboard of some kind, so it's an active wall rather than just, because it is what it is behind it. You know, we could push it back, you know, we could push the utility room back, but it could be a nice little wall, because if you think about how it's gonna be used, you know, I think there's gonna be a fair amount of staging there, because all the buses are gonna come there, so maybe it could be something for some kind of activity for the.
I'll leave it up to you to
You know.
play around with. I just think, you know, having that square
Sure, I get it.
brick piece there and then the indented calf, you know, whether you pull the calf out, whether you push the utility in, or, you know, I'll leave it up to you to look at. But overall, I agree with a couple of the other comments made. I think this is a much improved design.
So part of the reasoning we were looking at bringing this out was to provide then maybe this corner window. So before, when this slot was there, you really just had this as a window wall, this is a window wall. By shifting this bar, we saw an opportunity to get this corner glazing and then maybe more play area that would wrap around this cafeteria. So that would ease a little bit more of that, what had been talked about previously, the play area, that kids could come out and go to the playground. And so
You could basically, you know, you could take the utility room and squash it so it's not as deep. Because I think you're opposed to seeing that kind of big box that it's
Yeah.
sticking out. You know, you could make it longer to the left and push it up a little more so it's not so overpowering when you enter, you know. That could be something. to
Put
look
an
at.
angle on it.
Sure.
Just cut it in half. They're all too big anyway, aren't they?
Just do something so there's not a big
Hey,
square
he
brick
didn't make the
wall.
meeting,
Yeah,
so he
that's-
didn't see that.
I'm not the guy who has to worry about it.
One other suggestion would be looking at the north wing to do the same indentation at the teacher planning and resource that you did in front.
Yeah, right.
Because we always forget about the fact.
We would like it, we would eventually get there with it, we just didn't get there with it on this plan, but yes, absolutely.
Can you go back to the donations?
Anyone in particular?
I think the one that showed, the one that Dennis was coming to, I guess, balance maybe, but and I don't see it, I don't think as much as you're saying, but I wonder if there's any of these elements, like I kind of like, I like this and these, like if there's this sort of, any of that could be replicated in some small way or play off, like if we like this sort of roof or whatever, the sunshade thing, and there was an opportunity for one or two over there or something. And I know those are not classrooms, but I wonder if that might help a little.
Yeah,
We're
we're trying to
talking
bring
about
it together a
tying
little
the
bit
whole thing
more.
together. Because
Dennis was saying it seems like two separate buildings.
Yeah, or we talked a lot about the wood, like if we did a little of that same wood, and if we just ended up with the cedar, it might make it all look maybe less half and half, like to your point.
Very good.
Yeah.
Sure.
Suggestion.
Yeah. I don't know, you can put it on a utility room very easily, but
Sure.
most people want to see.
But maybe if there's this
Maybe there's not-
interactive space that's out here, maybe where,
Like these kind of shadow box
maybe,
things.
maybe this language kind of helps frame that.
Yeah, if this is an alcove with a teaching moment and then bringing in that same attitude.
And say, oh, I recognize that because it's all.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Did you mention earlier that there were some concealment panels for the rooftop units? Did I hear that? Or are they just not shown?
They're,
It's right there.
Right there.
You can see it. Yeah. So the alcove goes further back.
Okay, so there was
Which is-
concealment for the mechanicals.
Yeah, we have a wall that would be the wall
I know.
for the stage further back.
I'll have to consult those.
So we thought that's a good opportunity to put that.
Realizing this is coming out of the way. I have to run it by my wife because she really liked the original one. So.
Yeah. Let her
We're
know.
in trouble now. No matter what you do, there's someone who's gonna love it and someone who's not.
Yeah, hopefully your wife likes this rendition.
Yeah, she already. The last one, so.
it's, I do think this part here made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that broke up that long stretch that was there. Yeah.
Your committee.
Big
person
improvement.
for that suggestion.
Few minor tweaks and, sounds good. Keep up the good work.
Good job, Ernest.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the Norton School schematic design discussion. Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. You're there.
Do you mind, sorry, I think we're still in, Tecton's update, is that okay?
Go ahead. Once Tecton has the floor, they don't give it up.
Yeah, so, the other, I just want to briefly mention, in the packet, we had mentioned that we had our SDR meeting for North End, with OGA, formerly OSCGNR, so the Office of Grant Administration. We do have the SDR checklist that's at the back of this. There are some items that we will need to follow up on it for design development review. But the takeaway is that we had our meeting yesterday, went well. We received approval. We got the approval yesterday afternoon for it. So good meeting and.
Yeah, excellent meeting.
So and the last thing that I wanted to mention is between now and our next meeting, we will have 2 community meetings, one for the North End on September 26th and one for Norton on September 27th. So in addition to being at the town council next Tuesday, the following Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll be having some community.
Town council meeting was changed. It was originally going to be the 12th.
Right, it's on here as the 12th, but it's now. this
Moved to the 19th at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, just to know about that.
And I urge anyone who'd like to come to that, to come to the other meetings that we have listed here under number 9. If nothing else, just sitting back and hear some of the input that gets put out there.
I have the flyer that was mailed to all the homes, doesn't include the letter, but if anybody wants any to, pass along to anybody. There are also ample amounts of these at every school, in addition to some nice poster board of the designs that TechCom put together. Those are at each of our schools too, on display along, like I said, with the information about the upcoming events.
And I've had several people who have approached me about the fact that we mailed all these out to everyone in the community, and we're really open to, presenting what we've worked on so far and getting some input. So I think it struck a nice note out in the community.
Rich, just quickly on the town council meeting, just if anyone is planning to come, we start at 7, but we have 2 presentations beforehand. We're intentionally trying to take this up around 8 to accommodate schedules. So if
Yeah.
anyone can make it, if that means you can do dinner and get there at 8 o'clock, you're more than welcome.
And that'll be fine, yeah. The list of meetings is under number 9 on your agenda. And is there anything else? The only other thing I would say is my wife, please ask me to not bring home any of the cake. She even sent some baggies that people could take some cake and bring it home with them because she didn't want them. She just wants the empty plates, and that's it. So, and she made a point of saying she would not be around. She's going to California to be with the grandson, so she won't be here for the next meeting. So there'll be no food.
Please thank her for
You
that.
don't
She
have-
actually said
You don't
to
have
me,
a freezer?
yeah, there you go.
I'm just saying.
No, she said to me, you have to go to Big Y and get cookies or something. So anyway,
Yeah,
do I have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
So moved, seconded?
Yeah.
Yes? All those in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. Wonderful meeting.